So before we jump into what you're up to at BuzzFeed these days, I wanted to reminisce with you about upstate New York. No. I was hoping that you could talk to me about how you made the leap from neuroscience to performance art.
I wish I could say swiftly. But no, I mean, I studied neuroscience at Brown University and was really lucky to have an amazing mentor there and a guy named Mark Baer. My dad is a fairly well-recognized scientist, and so I like how you're putting it into your armpit for for silencing.
Muffler, yeah.
No, I mean the short of the story was that I actually had a really interesting experience where I was presenting or defending a paper that I had written and went to this neuroscience convention in San Diego, and during it realized that it was like a whole bunch of people yelling at each other and like posturing and then like getting drunk in the evening and like hooking up.
Hollywood? Is that what you said?
And I was like, and I was in a band. No, I was in a band at that time, and I was like, and we were thinking about taking it more seriously. And at that point, I was like, oh wow, this is like sort of like the rock and roll world, except like not as cool. And like, if I want to do those things, I should probably do rock. So I joined a band and toured for a while with a bunch of folks, and then became when this was, I went to. I met my band in a university, and my drummer was pre-med, and the bass player was a poli-sci major, and so at one point, it was sort of like, well, we're getting management around, so I'm going to go to med school, which is like it's not like the classic sort of band conversation, and we weren't, it was kind of a stagnant time, and so I became unemployed, and then tried to like teach myself how to illustrate on computers, and I had some coding background, so I got into a company called Dennis Interactive, which was Felix Dennis's kind of digital services advertising company. And then I had a viral hit just by accident.
Was this your birthday invitation?
Yeah, it was a birthday invitation.
All right, so what was it that made it novel? I mean, I realize we're back like in the early...
2001. This was 2001. What made it what?
What was remarkable about it at that time?
Well, what was remarkable about it was that it took off, right? I mean, so,
how did millions of people show up at your house for the birthday party? Or?
No, I mean there was a venue change that came out of it, but it was I filmed myself dancing to Madonna's "Justify My Love." There wasn't actually a stable video platform at the time. You'll remember this was the time of email forwards and the dancing baby getting shoved around by QuickTime, and if you wanted to see a video on a browser, it would tell you that you didn't have the codec installed, and then you'd like click a whole bunch of things and nothing. It would still not do anything, so I did it in Flash, which was actually there was an interesting time there. when I first started playing with Flash, it was called Future Splash, and then became Flash 2, and then Flash 3, and
Right.
all these things. But one thing that you could do was have still images in a row, which was sort of a precursor to the animated GIF. And so you could make things that sort of looked like movies and that could be seen in a reliable way. So I'd been playing around with that for a while and did it with live action. And yeah, it took off. And, I mean, just to set up sort of maybe some of the bigger questions around social and around social distribution is I think that you started that question with the notion that the content would hold the key for why it did well. And I would challenge that because it's a fool's errand in many cases to look at.
So you're in the content is king place, right? Here where people in the creative community at least think that great content drives audience. So we're wrong?
Oh, this is going to be a long 45 minutes. Yes, I would say that it's probably not the full picture because the notion of good content drives audience. The notion of drive and what that means is probably the most interesting part of that statement. And I think that that's been the challenge of the last 10 or 15 years is coming to terms with the fact that a lot of the assumptions that we probably had as an industry broadly around what quality is, what good is, has come into opposition with the stark reality of this social distribution. And the things that we thought were great are not performing well when the audience gets to choose how it spreads. And so all of a sudden we're starting to question some of these, the core attributes, and I mean aesthetic attributes, I mean attachment attributes, so in other words, who's involved, all these kinds of things don't seem to be working, and that's created some problems. So I would say that content is perhaps the beginning of the story. Yeah.
So dissect the phenomenon that you had, and then let's apply it to sort of what you're doing now. What fueled the phenomenon that occurred around your birthday invitation?
I really don't know. I mean, that became sort of the crucial question. And I met Jonah Peretti, who co-founded Huffington Post and went on to found BuzzFeed right around that time. And Jonah had it was really neat. We got introduced by a mutual friend. And Jonah had this really funny experience. So my thing was in March, right? This happened to me in March. And just to give you a sense of the scale, it was like I sent this birthday invitation out to 17 people, and I don't know how many, 20 million people or so saw it in a week, like email forwards, right? And so my email application, I'm like, I can't refresh it fast, like. It's trying to download and it can't keep up, and so the number of queues just keeps going up, and it was like, hi, hello, like, you've got too much time on your hands, and like there was like 5 or 6 flavors in hundreds of thousands of emails that just like were coming through the stream, and it was like very profound and amazing, and it was also sort of predated the cultural phenomenon of virality. So there were only like 3 or 4 examples of this happening at that time. The Dancing Baby being one of them, right? And so Jonah, we got introduced by a mutual friend a couple months after that because he had just had this wonderful experience where he had Nike had opened up. This line of shoe where you could customize the shoe by having a piece of text stitched into the side. And Jonah had written saying, I'd like to order a pair of your shoes, please, and can you please write the word sweatshop into the side of the shoe? And they wrote back and they were like, we're really sorry, we can't accommodate that request, and can you please choose another title? And he said, well, why? And they were like, well, we can't accommodate slang. And he was like, oh, okay, well, it's not slang. It's actually in the dictionary, it means where workers toil in unfair conditions for like low wages. And then it just this like wonderful, like bizarre exchange goes back and forth in email until finally they say we withhold the right to say no. And he says, that's fine. just, you can, I'll change what it says on the side. If you could just send me a picture of the 10-year-old Vietnamese girl that makes the shoe, I'll be happy. And so like they don't write back, and Jonah assembles this all into one email, and he forwards it out to his friends, and all of a sudden, like a week or two later, he's on the Today Show, like with the global head of PR from Nike, and Jonah is talking about fair labor practice, and he was like, why am I talking about fair labor practice? I'm a grad student at MIT. I don't know anything about this. And so both of us had this like interesting, direct experience with virality, and both of us had these sort of fundamental questions, which was, what is the relationship between popularity and the content itself, and then what are the other properties in the network which are contributing to this? Because it was an interesting time. It was a time where, just like you said, there were a lot of assumptions about good content will spread.
Right.
And then the dancing baby happened, and so it's like, you started this caveat chain. It's like good content will spread and dancing babies, right? And good content plus dancing babies, also a chicken that you can tell what to do, right? Subservient chicken was the Crispin Porter thing. And it became this sort of absurdist train where it was clear that there was a lot of thinking to be done. And so Jonah and I ended up forming, well, he formed this thing called the Contagious Media Group, where he invited a whole bunch of people who had had some sort of direct experience with this phenomenon to, basically drink beers and eat pizza and talk about what might be happening.
Well, talk to me about this. This discussion seems very current, although, I mean, this has spanned, 15 years of discussion that you've been having about what are the properties that make a video viral, and it's a discussion that continues to this day. I know that when I've spoken to network executives, they've attempted to emulate something that became a phenomenon on YouTube and tried to match it as closely as they could in a way that didn't feel authentic and never really gained traction. So deconstruct for me what you think can be successful, what the parameters are, and how does that inform what you're doing now at BuzzFeed?
That's a deep question.
Start one shovel at a time.
One shovel at a time?
There you go.
I've not heard that. I'm gonna take my fancy shovel first. We'll start with the fanciest shovel I have. So the first, the first thing that I would say is that that content exists inside of a massive ecosystem, right? And so this is the difference between structuralists and post-structuralists. And I think that that's like a big thing to, and this is my fancy shovel, you can tell, right? But that is, I think that's at the core of the discussion is
right.
The difference between thinking of media as this perfect encapsulation that you hand to other people and you want them to experience
That's
it
so
like great. You intended it to be experienced, right? And then the post-structuralist idea, which is, Roland Barthes, Death of an Author, Susan Sontag on Camp, and then, there's a beautiful essay called On the Creative Act by Duchamp, where there was this, this period in the 50s where they were like, oh my gosh, the audience matters? Like, holy crap, like they're not perceiving it in the same way that we're intending it. And there was this, all of a sudden, this kind of, this fracturing in the relationship between the author and the media. So anyways, the point being that content exists in a very, very complex ecosystem. So what I would suggest is that that the mechanism which has kind of come into its own over the last 15 years, which is social and mobile more recently, but is people sharing content with other people. And if you can figure that out, then you have this amazing resource in having to spend less money for things to go big, right? And a lot of people see them. So here's the question. Why do some things share better than others? Why does some content spread better than others? Why do some people opt in to share some content over others? And I would argue that maybe content has a series or different kinds of usage Like we use it in different ways. And the one that has dominated the story of media has been consumption. Like we have it, we consume it, it makes us feel good, like really good, right? And it overwhelms us. It actually maybe psychically replaces us for a certain amount of time. We give ourselves over to it, right? And if you think about that, right, and if you think about going into a movie theater and the amazing experience that you can have, really transformative, and to the point where you're crying, and you are in the process of really actually saying, like, maybe I should ride a motorcycle through the Andes by myself, right? Like there's this moment where you've so given yourself over, and then the movie ends, and you and the person that you came with sort of shuffle out, and you hit that broad daylight, and you're like, where the fuck am I? Like, it's like, and like life hits you, and it's like not so beautifully orchestrated, like the sound is all off, and it's, you know, there's this big dissociation, and you shuffle in silence with this person, and then they turn to you and they say, like, did you like it? And you say, yeah. And that's it, right? I mean, like you might have like a little bit more, like if you went with a film nerd, like you might have like some sort of effete conversation of like, well, I mean, like I think they were very referential of blah blah blah, but if you think about the mismatch of the experiential component and the way one talks about that experiential component, it's very much a personal experience. The depth of the personal experience is very hard and very vulnerable to communicate with other people. So now, let's say that that's consumptive media, there's an intent. The second one might be that we use media more and more now as a proxy for conversation with one another. We actually use it to converse, and the simplest forms are emoji. You guys use text, and you're now using images to convey certain kinds of emotion. Animated GIFs are another form of that, which are quite powerful. And you can start to see that media can have this incredible usage where it is conveying some sort of a social intent. And in fact, absent of the social intent, it has no meaning. Right. I think of the Captain Picard, I show this sometimes in a slide deck, Captain Picard face palming, right? Right. Are you aware of what this is, the face palm? I love that all of you are nodding. It's very gratifying to me. That's not a piece of consumable media. You would never hang that on your wall, right? and yet it's incredibly effective at communicating the deepest level of this embracing how radically stupid people can be, right? Like if you drop your iPhone in the toilet, you can write paragraphs and paragraphs and not be able to convey that, right? And so this notion that we can use media as an effective vehicle for communication starts to signal what I would say is the basis of a discussion around why some things share better than others. And I'm conscious of the fact that I told you that I'm sort of diuretic. Diuretic of the mouth. Apologies to the live streaming audience for that. They bleep it out, right? Or do you live bleep it? Do you want to do it again?
Let's do it
roll
again.
it back. I'm a bit diuretic. Oh, you're terrible bleeping.
I am, I'm sorry. Here, we'll cover your mouth next time. All right, so how are you applying, as you're thinking about how media has become a part of my life and how I might use it to express, sort of as a proxy for my emotion or to connect with people through media, how has that started to ripple through the work that you're doing with BuzzFeed? Well,
so it's a great question, and I realize that, like, having said what I just said, I hope that it spawned a good amount of cynicism within you, and you started to say, well, that sounds really great, like, but it sounds a little bullshitty. But that's the basis. If you kind of make a kind of crazy statement like that, the great thing is that you're in a perfect environment to test it, right? You have immediate feedback mechanisms. Right. You can see whether people share stuff. Those are public metrics, right? So let's say, so what we really think about a lot is is we say, what assumptions can we make? If people are using media in this way, what are some of the assumptions that we might make, and where might we get the beginning of those assumptions? And one way is to look at the statements that people use, you use, when you share a piece of media. Like, I know you've shared a piece of media with someone and you've written something to justify why.
Right.
Right? And that, to me, is a very interesting piece of data. And so one way to do it is to just look at those, and you start seeing some patterns emerge. And one that's particularly interesting to us, which is the basis of the piece that we opened with, is the notion of identity. So the statement would be, oh my gosh, this is totally
Right.
me. Wow, I never thought anyone else experienced this
Right.
except me, right? And so the notion of identity, you can then be very reductive about. You can say, oh, there's geographic identity, there's genetic identity, which is left-handedness or red-hairedness, or all these different facets. There's sexual identity, gender-based identity, culture of origin identity, and it goes on and on and on. And then you can just literally map those out and start testing them.
Okay.
And just try them and see if you're right. And that's the gift of this age, and also the gift that short form gives you, is that you can do this very quickly. So at present, we're making, I think, 35 short form videos a week.
Man, that's
and
unbelievable.
each one of them comes from one of these lines of argument. Not just identity, there's also a line of argument around that. The piece that you saw is an interesting intersection of genetic identity plus what we call post-literatism. So trying to not rely on language as the basis for
that's interesting.
the piece, because international has become huge.
Right.
So on YouTube or
You're
on
not,
Facebook,
you're
you're not
localizing the content,
that's
right?
That's right.
All right, so that's one area of exploration. You must have other sorts of categories based on what I've seen.
Oh, it gets really weird because we're, you can do all the sort of taxonomic work you want, and you can try to categorize this stuff in an intellectual and rational way, but you have to be. I think you should. The best approach is that you use data and gut in a kind of fluid way. Data actually, a lot of people confuse data-oriented process with science. And science is a very particular kind of process. But data can also have another really interesting effect on innovation, in that if you have lots of data points, let's say you want to get the number of people who share something up, right? You might have a bunch of assumptions about what will do that, and you start testing those assumptions and it doesn't work. And if you're trying to just get one number to move, it gets weird, because all of a sudden, all of the things you thought were going to work don't work.
Right.
And now you start really getting confused, and you start stripping away things that you had always relied on, and you start moving away from things like story. Beginning, middle, and end. If you want people to share things, you'll notice that if you have a beginning, a true beginning, so tone setting, character setting, mood setting.
You have bounce.
Oh yeah, you're competing with the refrigerator. That's in the feed, they're seeing this and they're hungry for cheese. That's the way that I think about it. It's they're hungry for cheese. You have to get them to buy in before they go eat cheese. That's the level of urgency,
So you're talking about ADHD programming,
That feels very pejorative to me. I don't think that that's right. I think that in the sort of modern era, there's a flow. Media kind of flows around you, and not only that, but it's also really giving in to what distributed networks are, has some implications. One is that, we bemoan depth being lost in all facets of media, in reporting and in character development and all this kind of stuff. But we have to realize that, in a real post-structuralist world where you say, oh, it is this massive network that is connected, the notion of introducing someone to something novel or new sometimes means just piquing their interest so that they start looking for the rest of the story in lots of different nodes in their network. So in other words, not every piece has to be the full encapsulation of all that is interesting. It just has to position it correctly, and then there has to be enough information in the network to fill the rest of the story. We can argue about whether we're at that place yet. That's fine.
Do you see yourself as filling all the gaps, or do other people have a part of that?
Oh, I think everyone has a
process?
part of it. I mean, a good example would be, and I think you even have this queued up. But
which one did you want to show?
well, let me first explain it. But it would be the couples one.
Oh, perfect.
So, you know, there's one way of looking at a lot of the media that is popular right now, and if you look at it from a consumptive standpoint or a structuralist standpoint, and think of all the value of the good inside the media, it's very easy to judge it, right? You watch it and you're like, oh, well, that's no Godfather, you know, like, bleh. And I think that's correct. I mean, that is a perfectly correct statement to make. However, you could also say that, let me just back up and say that another interesting facet of the networked age is that traditional creatives think that they're leaning in by saying, oh, I can have a conversation with the audience now, right? Let me listen to like there's a chance for the audience to speak to me. That's still actually a very traditional model where there's one content creator and then there's an audience, and they're still focused on that. You know, in the reality of it is that the content itself takes on life and moves without you.
Right.
And it doesn't care about you anymore. And in fact, the people who watch it don't care about you either, or they might at some point. And so when I think about, you'll see a piece, and you know, you can almost, in the middle of the piece, you can try to see if you can switch your hat when you view it. One way, look at it as a piece of media encapsulated, and then switch your mind and realize that this piece of media was shared, I think, over 3 million times, and it was shared between a person and their significant other, and think about that they provide the complexity and depth. Like in the exchange, that's where the complexity and depth actually gets put around the piece. Like you don't have to put it inside, and each couple, as they share it with each other, the meaning grows around it. And that's what that is really leaning into post-structuralism, or like the value of the network is the fact that all the facets of the media that we loved are now distributed, and unfortunately you can't see it all at once.
Right.
And if you did, your brain would explode.
We should show this video. It's great. It's really great, and it somehow manages to distill lots of dysfunction.
Right, you said that it actually resonated with you.
It did. Which perhaps is too confessional, but whatever. So let's, okay, now you know about all the dysfunction in my life. So can we show the weird things all couples fight about video? Or we can pantomime.
That's not how you fold the towels.
It doesn't matter how you fold a towel.
It does matter how you fold a towel. If you want it to fit in the closet, you have to roll it. Oh my God, could you chew any louder?
This goes on here. It takes 2 seconds.
Well, then the next person who comes in will do it.
That's not the point. Hey, did you throw away my leftovers?
No.
I could have Oh, you bitch.
What did you call me?
Nothing. The toilet paper goes over. It's printed that way so you could see it.
No, the toilet paper goes under so that the cats don't get at it.
That makes no sense.
What do you want to get for dinner?
I don't really care.
Then just pick something.
You choose.
Told you.
Shut up. I don't see why I have to put the utensils face down.
Because when they're sticking up like that, if someone trips and falls, they're gonna impale themselves and die.
That's literally the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
I'm not playing this game where I list every single thing and you shoot it all down. I'm not doing this again.
Well, then I don't know what to tell you.
Oh my gosh, watch this. This is the best line.
Did you watch this without me?
You weren't home! Seriously, 6 more inches and it's in the sink.
Well, then put it in 6 more inches. I get it.
I get it.
Anything will be fine. It's
Fine.
food.
Fine. All right, we're gonna get pizza.
Anything but pizza.
What do you want to eat?
That is Bill Paxton.
It is Bill Pullman.
Bill Paxton was in Aliens. That is Bill Paxton. That is him. Game over, man. That is that man right there. Why am I gonna put him away? I'm wearing them tomorrow morning.
I don't care if you're wearing them tomorrow morning. I don't want them just sitting by my side of the bed all night.
Why do you do this? You squeeze from the bottom. The next person doesn't have to squeeze then.
It's toothpaste. It's not like it's hard to squeeze it from a new area on the tube.
Why are we fighting about this?
Why are we fighting about this?
Why are we fighting about this? I'm sorry. I shouldn't have made you make the decision. With that being said, I think your original call of pizza is fine. Just no pepperoni.
What do you want on it then?
Anything other than
Oh my
pepperoni.
God, I'm going to murder you, and when the pizza guy gets here, he's gonna help me bury your body, and then we are gonna get married.
No, he won't, because he'll probably be like, yeah, I feel you, bro.
So they are an actual couple, and they're both improvisers, and they're pretty fabulous. But you can see how, like, you know, if you shared that with your partner, it takes on a totally different meaning, right? It's beyond
It could be
the
accusatory.
performance, right? But it's not viewed as look at this performance and judge it. But it takes on that kind of complexity, which is, I mean, I'm not suggesting that, you know, when you watch Ingmar Bergman films, right, that you aren't also doing that you aren't also putting yourself into that movie, and that's where the resonance is. But it's a much more personal thing. It's not a social thing, right? You're not sharing Ingmar Bergman films, I don't think. Maybe your Facebook feeds look very different than mine. Maybe it is, you know, skewed in a different direction.
Well, talk to me about the creative process then, because I mean, the assumptions that go into creation seem to be bounded differently. So how is the creative process then different?
The creative process. Well, so I don't know. I mean, the creative process is very distributed in our group. So one of the things that we did for short form in creating the studio was to think about where the current model came from, right? It's actually a very industrial model, the division of labor, editors, writers, DPs, like post-production, you know, like you're gonna go into a place and you're gonna fabricate reality with lumber that you get tax credits for. And I mean, it's like this very, very industrial process, almost like an assembly line. And if you think about that versus like what the modern era affords, which is pretty cheap tools, cheap distribution, like, you know, you can just do everything, right? And so we took away the division of labor stuff and really hired folks that were just, you know, people that were hobbyists anyways, that made media for fun, that were, you know, they knew enough about this stuff to do it, and some of them had some, you know, more specialization than others, and then put them into teams and had these lines of inquiry that we're talking about. So you take an idea, an assumption around why media might share, and you're following it by testing over and over again.
And you're looking at what precisely? Shares over clicks?
Yeah, it could be, well, shares are much more interesting than views. Views you can buy. Views also puts you into a weird category of kind of trying to game.
No one ever does that.
Right. But it's actually, I mean, I guess it would be a rational way of dealing with optimizing that thing. But shares, you know, because it's initiated by a person and they're putting their own reputation on the line, I guess, in sharing it. It's not an easy thing to game, and that feels right. But there's other kinds of things that you can look at. You can look at, you know, we call it sort of like crushing on platform dynamics. So it could be, you know, oh, I want this to work really well on Facebook. How would I do that? Or I want a certain percentage of the views to come from a particular country. How would I do that? Or Like I want to crack Pinterest, or I want to crack Snapchat. And I mean, every platform has its own sort of unique dynamics. So there's many lines of inquiry going on. And a single person might be involved in 3 or 4 at a particular time. So the division of labor is out, and then the second piece is that we don't do green lighting in the traditional sense. You pitch to your peers, and you tell them why you're interested in it and how you're planning on doing it, and then you make it.
So there's no hierarchy, no funding?
Oh, there's hierarchy. Yeah,
Okay,
you
so how does it work?
but it's not hierarchy in the conceit that those above you have a better sense of what things work. That is a trap. That's very Cartesian paternalistic, I guess. I mean, like, if I had allowed myself to give the green light or stop projects, I probably would have missed 60% of the interesting threads that we're on now. And I just think it's too complex. Like, think about it. It's like media and culture, and it's distributed where, it's a network, and every single node on the network, and this mass network, is like one of you. And I could spend years with one of you and not know what the hell was going on, because you're changing and your tastes are changing and you lie to me constantly. You're just liars. But right? I mean, you like things that you say you hate, and you hate things that you say you like, and it's just like very complex, and it's very difficult. So the idea that like somebody could be sitting on top of, and I mean this when you're really trying to tackle the sort of social opportunities, but the idea that somebody could be like, well, this is going to go viral. It's like, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work because the whole atmosphere is changing. It's really a process and a constant process. And there's ways of looking at growth and getting better at something. And one trap would be to think that there is a perfect viral piece of content that once you figure out how to make, you will just be able to do forever, right? It doesn't work. Like, the world changes. It's like a Heisenberg kind of problem. And so really what it is it's about attuning the production and creative process to a constant iterative cycle.
Are there traps too? I mean, I'm always curious about analytics, and as a writer, I'm always like shocked to see stories that I didn't think would be all that interesting to people go broadly, and then conversely, things that I'm really passionate about flatline. So what do you do with the shared data, and how does that inform the creative process, and how do you, allow creativity to flow, when you're measuring everything against performance metrics?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think that the first thing is that you don't funnel it through a single point. So in other words, if you had a team of people parsing the data who then whispered in the ear of someone who then was like, oh, we need to make more things about toasters. Like, there's a lot of problems with that, because it's very hard to get clear input-output signals on data.
Right, I mean, you're not focus grouping millions of people, right?
Right. And yeah, and data is just very, very difficult to understand. I mean, sometimes, I think, so anyways, the way we deal with it is we infuse everyone with the data. We just say, here's a CMS, you can look at how, past videos have done in all these different ways. And here we have somebody who's, sort of brilliantly scouring the web to see what is trending at certain times. And sometimes, the words that come back are weird, right? It's like, I don't know what you're going to do with this, but fruit is hot right now. Fruit. And I say that, I mean, it's funny, but it actually was worked, where a producer was like,
example.
Well, that was, it was simple, like, or five ways you're eating fruit wrong, or 5 fruit hacks, or something like that. And it was the top video on every single platform that we release by massive scale. And So I don't, like you could say to me, oh, so you've figured out some aspect of it. I have no idea why that worked. Or, I mean, it was so sort of special and strange, and we could layer this nice progression of recommendation on top of it. But the truth is that it's usually messier than that, and there's lots of different data points that are coming in terms of where you get ideas from. And then we have producers hopefully get triggered by some aspects. Like it's almost like data on the creative side anyways. It's like data is astrology. Like it comes in and it bounces off what you're interested in, and it focuses you for just a moment, and like gives you a little bit of hope that that thing that you're interested in has a little bit more chance of success, and can push that piece along. That said, we are getting better over time at making things that pop. And I credit the amazing talent of the people that are in the studio, more so than the data.
Talk to me about your sort of long-term ambitions. I mean, BuzzFeed has been creating these short-form videos for a while and has billions of views. To its credit, how do you see the evolution of your studio as you're going forward?
Ultimately, I want to make microsecond videos. Like, I want to make videos so fast that you can't see them anymore, but you're just always
so subliminal
seeing
videos.
them. But I want them as rich as the feature films that are now, so just like all compacted. No, I think that, when I think about this, I don't think about the form of the content. I think about the process by which it's made. And when we started this studio, a big thing that drove me and Jonah in our initial conversations was, I had this vision of what I thought old Hollywood was. And then over time, it became like, actually, when we started like learning what old Hollywood was, we realized that the vision was more like how Hollywood portrays old Hollywood. But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
like you're on a lot, and like there's a guy on stilts walking by, and you're like, hey, Henry, and there's a dude like carrying a set of the moon, and it's just like looks so fun, and they all know each other, and like there's stuff going on, and then when we learned more about it, it was like actually very, very highly industrialized. Like it was almost like an assembly line, and then there were very restrictive contracts and stuff like that. But I'm still really excited about having a studio where there's lots of space for young creative talent to come and like cut their teeth by working with lots of other creative people who are there on a full-time basis. They have access to studio space, they have access to equipment, they have access to data and the modern kind of infrastructure of production, but they're really making stuff. And so I don't think that that's actually limited to any length. Obviously, as you get out into longer forms, it's harder to test and iterate against, but you can do some of that testing and iterating before you go into the big stuff, right? Like you can do casting inside short form videos that you release. You can do testing on the look and feel of sets. You can do even like testing performers' ability to convey certain kinds of emotional moments. Like you can do all that kind of stuff. And so that's what's exciting for me looking for the future is to create those kind of spaces at scale and really have bring the idea of getting paid a fair wage, having a real career in the creative business without having to, become one of the 10 people each year that actually makes it, and feel really satisfied by that. So that's exciting.
Let's talk then about the business around the creative process. YouTube has created a phenomenally successful platform, and yet even the most successful of the creators on YouTube are encouraged to make money beyond the platform because the revenue isn't yet enough to really support the creative endeavors. And there obviously are exceptions, but that tends to be what I hear from YouTubers when I speak with them. how's your revenue model different, and how are you supporting the creative process?
How are we supporting the creative process?
How are you making money?
Oh, I see. Because I was like, well, we pay people to make creative things.
Bravo, bud.
How are
How many artists making money? I'm glad you guys are making money. How many artists making money?
how are the artists making money?
Yeah.
Well, we hire them full time.
Yeah.
They are full-time employees in our model.
Employee made that video we just watched?
Yeah.
You didn't like pick that up, see it someplace and go, this is cool, we're gonna do it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. So we make all of our own movies and videos and all that kind of stuff. It's all made in-house. It's not an aggregator, it's not an MCN, it's not a collection of young people who submit their videos in. This is full-time labor.
Yeah.
So
You know, how do you support the creative process through the financial side? How do you guys make money?
So there's a bunch of different ways of monetizing video. One is adjacency. So in other words, things like pre-roll and things like putting things in the way in the front.
Right.
We don't, in our releases, the skippable 5-second format that YouTube spearheaded, we like that. We think that that was a really powerful innovation in pre-roll. Is pre-roll the best thing? I don't know, but I think that that was a pretty darn good bargain. So that's one way. Another way is that, so BuzzFeed.com has never done banner ads and has sort of always thought that is not a great way of thinking about advertising. And so they think more about branded content.
I was wondering.
So branded content, just in the way that we think about it, is where a brand partners with you on content where the goal is, number one, that right from the outset, the user knows that it's branded. So it is signaled very, very clearly. And the challenge is that you make a piece of content that satisfies some, part of the goal, the goals, or the goals of the brand, but is also something that an audience would want to share. Okay. That's like the ultimate. So the challenge is raising the expectations of advertising to the point where people actually seek it out and look for it. Very difficult. Not an easy challenge. But because we spend all of our time thinking about why things spread in ecosystems, I think we're doing it pretty well. We're still learning a lot, and we're still getting better at it. But
how valuable is it that you control the at least one part of the distribution through BuzzFeed?
I mean, BuzzFeed's amazing. It is, the BuzzFeed Motion Pictures aspect of what we do is the sort of mechanics of growth are slightly different. So in other words, one of the interesting things about our business, and especially if you really think about social, is that I think only about 15 to 17% of our views come from BuzzFeed.com.
Oh, that's interesting.
And then only another 15 to 17% come from any idea of audience that you could possibly have. So our subscribers, people who follow us on social media, all that kind of stuff. So you're left with like 60 to 65% of people who are getting it through means that have nothing to do with a core place or a core time. So that challenges a lot of ways of thinking about, if you hear a conversation in my studio where somebody says, well, our audience won't like it, you'll hear pushback. Like, what audience? What audience are you talking about? Like, which one? Like, where? How are you, like, our YouTube audience? Like, because our subscribers only watch, like, this amount. And, so there's a lot of things that are being challenged right now in that space.
Do you mind responding to some questions in the room?
Yes, very much so.
Okay, well, too bad.
Yeah, please.
Because the new Dear Kitten video just came out, and I just love that entire series.
I think the mic is just for the benefit of the
So just speak up.
Can you talk about how the Dear Kitten series with Friskies and how that keeps going, and how you developed it?
Yeah, sure. Dear Kitten came out of a series of things. I mean, it was grounded in some work that I did a while ago. initially I was trying to figure out whether, because I'd been making videos for quite some time and had never really been thinking about scale and growth so much. I'd been focused on other things, intimacy in media and like emotions and participation. And when I started thinking about growth, I realized that, you know, having my face in media was probably a downward driver, right? It was like, you really had to like me to put up with my media because my face was in it very, very prominently. So I started to take my face out of it and think about voiceover as enough personality, and then think about, oh, could you do that with stock footage so you could drive the cost of production down? So there's a series called the True Fact series, which is it's an animal kind of documentary series, which really is not a great characterization of what it is, but and so I did something called Sad Cat Diary, which again was sort of an exploration of more. We would call that an identity piece. We would call it a cat ownership identity piece. And then I would layer on top of it another form that we think about a lot, which is called mockademic, where this is, you know, I saw a picture of Larry David over there. Larry David is the best at this, of creating rules for places that have no rules. And that's mockademic to us. And so with Purina, we did a series of videos with them, which tried to explore this notion of ownership, the identity of pet ownership, with the idea of, you know, how a cat might justify their own actions, humans' actions, and then that led up to Dear Kitten, and the first one did very well, and then yeah, we just released another one, and hopefully there'll be a lot more.
Do you write them?
So they're written with the team, and obviously Purina has a good amount of say into what they want to focus on. But I voice them, and I do some of the finish work on the text. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Hi. What would you say is your favorite or your two favorite pieces of content you guys have made?
That's really hard. So we've made probably over 2,300 pieces of content, 2,300 videos. I think, you know, it changes over time. And I'd say that there's some content that recently I thought was really imaginative. I don't even think about the content anymore because I'm so invested in the people that work in the studio. So I'm looking at their own growth, and I'm looking at the way that they're reaching out in the context of the work that we do. So I don't really think about it as an encapsulation, but there's a piece that they can show, which is the Disney princesses.
Oh, I love this. This is great.
If Disney princes were real.
Do you think that we could show this? This is fabulous. Yeah.
Well, you set it up.
Yeah.
I mean, super complicated. Yeah.
Do you mind if we show that now? Perfect.
Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there lived a beautiful girl who dreamed of finding her prince. Alas, real life is no fairy tale. Here's why Disney princes
So, this is love.
would make terrible boyfriends.
My dad threw this party so I can meet a girl who is
Emotionally independent.
hot and rich, like us. So, you marry me?
I think I left my straightener on.
Hey, 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 hey.
What are you doing?
Oh, thank God. I thought you were dead.
Then why would you try to kiss me?
Hold on, don't change the subject. Who are these 7 guys texting you?
They're just my roommates.
So now that we live together, we need to establish a few ground rules.
Actually, I'm a little hungry.
You are not allowed to step foot into that side of the house, especially my room, ever. It is forbidden.
Okay, does that include the bathroom?
Also, I'm gonna need to know where you are and what you're doing at all times, because sometimes I get lonely. Do this and I'll release your father from my basement.
You kidnapped my dad?
Nailed it.
Who are you talking to?
What happened?
It goes on. I guess we chose to cut it short.
Oh, it's fabulous.
But it goes on through the other princes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really like that one. And there was another piece which led to a really great series of explorations that one of our producers, Abe, did, which was if Asians said the things that white people say, which is, it was a very clever way of addressing, a social, a piece of social content that had a very particular message, but it was written in a way that was not just an obvious exchange, it was actually transposition. Like, you'd have to see it, but there's a whole series of those, and it opened a really, really great medium compromise between entertainment and pretty impactful stuff. So, yeah.
Other questions before we break?
So I'm curious what the kind of practical mechanics are of your process. You guys come to work in the morning, 12 men and women sit around a table and say, I got an idea for blah, blah, blah. How does that process work? How do you make a decision about what you want to go forward with or not? What do you do once you make those decisions?
Yeah, so it's pretty big now. I think there's probably 110, 120 people there, but the studio itself is, there's lots of different components to it. But the producers in the short form division, they sit at these long tables. There's a lot of them, and they're organized into teams. And each team, the character of the work that they make is really a reflection of that group of people. So in other words, we're not verticalized. There isn't like a food group or a sports group. We chose things like BuzzFeed Yellow and BuzzFeed Blue, and those are the channels that show up on YouTube and things. They're not rationally verticalized. So they once a week there's a big brainstorm where they just start, it could be anything from, hey, let's look at this one aspect of what's going on right now culturally, or it could be like, hey, we haven't done identity pieces for a while, or we haven't done this kind of thing, and sometimes, a whole brainstorm will come out of like, okay, let's think of the words what if. And just go down that. And then they brainstorm a bunch. Generally, at the end of the brainstorm, an email is sent out to the team that lists out all the ideas that came up, and then people start claiming them. And then, an individual person makes 3 videos every 2 weeks. So they just start making it. And then you get feedback.
Is it a scripting process, or is it?
It can be. It's up to the individual. It really is. I mean, it's really highly distributed. So. I'm sorry?
You don't ride herd, you don't say like this, don't like that, can we see a dog or whatever.
There's not somebody that sits over top of it that has that power. I mean, obviously when people are training up, there's a lot more guidance, but there isn't, let's put another set piece in this or.
So how does the LG decide which 3 they're gonna make and how that's gonna get done or whatever?
Well, it's the individuals that are making it. So they have to just corral resources and do it. So they do the thing that is in line with the interest that they're exploring at that time. Or sometimes they'll do things because they want to get something done really fast and it sounds kind of interesting and slightly easier. And there's a mix of those things. And I think like a lot of creative people, you bounce between things that are very difficult for you, and sometimes you take a sort of a rest and focus on more traditional aesthetics or things like that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yes?
Oh, wow. Oh, it works. It's really interesting to hear anybody talking about media and Cartesian philosophy.
Sure.
In the same conversation. You remind me in that sense of Strauss-Zelnick, which I think is a compliment. I think.
I have
don't know
no
if you
idea.
know But I'm curious, as a person who's made media, been in media, done all sorts of things, I'm fascinated by what you think of sort of, because you sound to me like and I do mean this as a compliment, as the jester and that comes in and is smarter than the king in this court. You sound like the one who says, let's just mess around with this and shake everybody up and wake them up, because they obviously aren't seeing what's happening here. So in that sense of putting together all these different teams to do from the absurd to the arcane and back to the profound, long term, what do you imagine your dance card holds for you, whether as performing artist or as business person or as creative business person? Where do you think these things lead if you had to tell someone, and you had to say, this is where I think this is all leading and where my arc will take me? You had to.
It was yes, I got that part, yes. It's a very articulate question. The way I consider the work that we're doing is in a way there's a sort of like modern topology, right? So almost think of like a 3D landscape that has hills and valleys and things like that. And it's gotten shaken up in the last 10, 15 years where certain parts of our experience as humans have, like, there's bigger peaks and it's just a different kind of landscape. And the topology of the media industry has remained fixed. So all of a sudden it's not fitting in certain of the crevices that have appeared, and it's kind of riding on top of things. And so I in that weird way, I think of what we're doing as some sort of an alignment, some sort of a molding or sitting on top of, or trying to get closer to the opportunities that are afforded right now. And I mean that from a perspective of serving the talent that's coming to this town. They are increasingly people that are used to publishing to YouTube, to Instagram, to getting immediate feedback, to having a constant life of creative work and publishing. When they come here and fit into the traditional business, they're often asked to slow down. They're asked to learn forms that are not native to them. And in the same way, thinking about iteration, and then also something that's very close to us is the value of diversity. And I mean that in terms of talent, background, and in the diversity of the ideas that are presented. A lot of things that would be classically thought of as niche are actually incredibly powerful now because they find the audience that they're intended for. So in that sense, I mean, I actually think that there's something very valuable about this pursuit. And I don't care so much about the form of the media that's created, but I think that those fundamental aspects of the media creation and the media that's produced and the way that it's consumed in the ecosystem is a more natural fit to what's happening right now. So in terms of my growth personally and the growth of the company, I feel very comfortable trying to make it as large as I possibly can because I think that there's real value in it. People can argue with that, and I'm sure I'll get a lot of argument along the way, but it's a nice position to be in, and somebody that's been working in media for a long time to come to a place that feels right in scale. Like I don't feel like as we grow that I am losing the things that are core to me. So that feels good.
It seems like a great place to end. I want to thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for the interview. Yeah, cheers.